Welcome to See Crime Stories, true stories of the missing and the pursuit of answers. It starts like a lot of stories in the desert, with a long, straight road and a family who thought they knew the future. Welcome to See Crime Stories, true stories of the missing and the pursuit of answers. In 1995, Silver Canyon, Arizona is the kind of town you drive through on your way to somewhere else. A handful of stoplights, a main street lined with sun-faded storefronts, and neighborhoods where most people have known each other for years. For the Blakes, it's home. Michael runs a hardware and feed store on Main, the kind of place where ranchers buy bolts and bales on credit. Laura spends her days at the small clinic, moving from exam room to exam room in worn sneakers and a name badge that started to fade at the edges. Their only child, 17-year-old Ryan Blake, looks like a success story in the making. He's an honor student, a distance runner for the high school, and the kid teachers describe as steady on parent-teacher nights. In old photos, he's all angles and sunburned cheeks, with the lean build you get from running long miles on hot pavement. On paper, it's exactly what any parent would want. But if you step past the trophies on his dresser and the race bibs taped to his wall, you start to see a second layer. On the desk in his room sits a beige home computer, the kind that screams when it connects to the internet. In a drawer nearby, folded bus timetables to cities hours away from Silver Canyon. Next to that, a notebook thick with tight handwriting, thoughts Ryan doesn't say out loud about feeling stuck, about wondering what else is out there. Online, in early social pages and message boards, he gravitates toward posts about leaving small towns, starting fresh, disappearing quietly. To Michael and Laura, these are just scraps of paper and a kid being curious. Their days are too full, inventory counts, double shifts, bills, to imagine that any of it has meaning. What they see is a son who gets up early, runs before school, keeps his grades up, and talks vaguely about college. When Laura worries that he seems quieter than usual, Michael shrugs it off. He's a teenager. They brood. The night everything changes is a warm evening at the tail end of the school year. In the kitchen, a ceiling fan rattles while Laura packs leftovers into containers for her next shift. Ryan steps in wearing a t-shirt still damp with sweat from practice, car keys hooked around his finger. He tells them he's heading out to Raven Rock Reservoir, a man-made lake just outside town. It's a common hangout, a gravel turnout, a strip of shoreline, a place where kids build small bonfires and play music out of car stereos. Nothing about the exchange stands out at the time. Laura reminds him not to stay too late. Michael, half watching the evening news, calls after him to top off the tank if the gas light comes on. The front door closes. A moment later, the engine turns over in the driveway, then fades down the street toward the dark outline of the foothills. Hours pass. The desert cools, and Silver Canyon settles into its night rhythm, trucks on the highway, distant dogs, the buzz of a neon sign outside the convenience store. Laura glances at the clock on the stove more than once. Midnight comes and goes. There's no sound of Ryan's car in the driveway, no slam of the front door, no I'm home. By early morning, her concern hardens into fear. She checks the phone, no messages. She calls one of Ryan's closest friends. He's groggy, confused. No, he wasn't at Raven Rock. No, there wasn't any big group going out there last night. As similar answers come from the few teens she can reach that early, the story Ryan told them, that he was meeting classmates, is suddenly in question. Michael and Laura don't wait for office hours or official channels. They get in the car and retrace the route Ryan would have taken, out of town, past the last gas station, onto the two-lane road that leads to the reservoir. The sun is barely up when they pull into the gravel lot at Raven Rock. Ryan's car is there. It's parked neatly near the edge of the turnout, facing the water. There are no broken windows, no dents, no obvious sign that anything violent happened here. The driver's door is closed. When Michael reaches in, he finds the keys still hanging from the ignition. Inside the car, a half-empty water bottle, a crumpled receipt, a stray running sock on the floorboard. No backpack. No note. No Ryan. Laura calls his name along the shoreline, voice echoing off rock and water. There's only wind and the soft slap of waves against the concrete ramp. It's too quiet for a place that was supposedly filled with teenagers the night before. They call the police. Soon, a patrol unit from Silver Canyon PD crunches into the lot. An officer takes down their statements, notes the position of the car, the presence of the keys, the absence of the driver. Another unit arrives, then a supervisor. Radios crackle. Someone unrolls yellow tape to block off the immediate area around the vehicle. What begins as a missing teen call shifts, in real time, into something bigger. Deputies walk the shoreline, scanning for footprints, discarded shoes, any sign that Ryan went into the water. Others look up the hill into the scrub, following faint paths made by fishermen and kids cutting their own trails over the years. There's no body, no blood, no torn clothing caught on brush, nothing that says accident, and nothing that clearly says crime. Back at the Blake's house, an incident report is opened. Ryan's name is typed into the system. His age, height, weight, and last known clothing are logged. In his room, the same trophies and journals sit where he left them. On the desk, the computer is dark, its last search history not yet examined. For now, the only thing investigators know for sure is this: a healthy 17-year-old drove out to Raven Rock Reservoir on a warm night in 1995, and by sunrise, all that remained was his car and an empty stretch of shoreline. For Michael and Laura, the line between before and after has been drawn. For detectives in Silver Canyon, this is now an open file, a missing runner, no body, no clear trail. And as the first day of searching comes to a close, one question hangs over the desert: did something happen to Ryan out here, or did he simply keep walking and never look back? By the time Detective Sergeant Jenna Ruiz reaches Raven Rock Reservoir, the sun is already burning off the morning haze. It's 1995, and for Silver Canyon PD, this is still just a missing teen call on paper. But one look at the scene tells her it's something that could linger for years. Ryan Blake's sedan sits where patrol left it, parked straight in the gravel, nose angled toward the water. Yellow tape marks off a rough perimeter. Deputies move quietly around the vehicle, careful not to disturb the fine layer of dust that might still hold a footprint or a palm print. The keys are still in the ignition. No broken glass. No forced entry. Ruiz starts with what she can control. She builds a timeline. She notes the time the parents say Ryan left home, the last phone calls they made, the moment they found the car. Every detail goes into her notebook before any theory does. In those first 72 hours, she knows, assumptions are the enemy. Search teams fan out along the edge of the reservoir. Uniformed deputies walk the shoreline in slow, overlapping passes. A small boat pushes off from the ramp, officers scanning the surface and the immediate shallows. Volunteers from town arrive in jeans and work boots, taking direction from a sergeant with a map spread across the hood of a cruiser. They check brushy draws, game trails, and tire ruts that veer away from the main turnout. There is no trace of Ryan. No shoe half sunk in the mud. No clothing hidden in the brush. No scuff marks that suggest a struggle. Just an empty car and a lot of open space. Back at the lot, Ruiz orders the vehicle processed. Photographs from every angle. Shots of the interior, the ignition, the odometer. A plastic bag for every item, the half-empty water bottle, the fast food receipt, the stray running sock on the floor. Fingerprints are lifted, but everything inside belongs to either Ryan or his parents. Nothing suggests a stranger reached in or forced him out. The next step is the world outside the reservoir. Patrol officers canvass the road leading out from Silver Canyon, gas stations, a roadside diner, the last convenience store at the edge of town. A few clerks think they might have seen a car like Ryan's, a kid paying for gas, but no one can put a name to a face. Security cameras, where they exist, are grainy and poorly angled. There's no clear shot of Ryan walking in with someone else, no vehicle obviously trailing him out of town. So Ruiz goes back to the people who knew him before he became the missing runner. At Silver Canyon High, she sits down with his coach, a guidance counselor, and two classmates. On camera, they all say the same thing: Ryan is reliable, disciplined, not the kind of kid who skips town or picks fights. But when she presses, a few small cracks appear. He's been quieter lately. Spending more time alone after practice. Talking vaguely about needing a change. At the Blake home, Ruiz walks the hallway lined with family photos, into a bedroom that looks like any ambitious teenager's. Cross-country medals. College brochures. A stack of carefully organized homework. She notes the computer on the desk, but in 1995 it's just another piece of furniture. The full picture of what he browsed there won't come until later, when the Blakes bring in a private investigator of their own. Weeks into the search, that outside investigator reviews the family machine and Ryan's early online activity. He finds printed bus timetables folded into a notebook, routes to Phoenix, Tucson, even farther out. In the browser history, pages on temp jobs, youth hostels, basic identification procedures. On one small message board, posts from a user who sounds a lot like Ryan ask about leaving a small town for good, how you do it, where you go, how you disappear without necessarily doing anything wrong. Bank records add another layer. Withdrawals are modest but deliberate, spaced out over several weeks. Not enough to run permanently, but enough to travel for a while, especially if you're 17 and willing to sleep rough. For Michael Blake, none of this changes his belief that something happened to his son. In interviews, he returns to the same points: Ryan's plans for college, his responsibilities at home, his lack of any criminal history. To Michael, the idea that Ryan simply drove out to Raven Rock and chose not to come back feels like an accusation against his parenting, against the life he built. Laura's reaction is more complicated. She remembers the late nights, the distant look in her son's eyes, the way he seemed to carry thoughts he never quite shared. As she reads the printouts from the computer and sees the bus routes underlined in pen, she starts asking herself a different question. Had Ryan been trying to say something all along, and did they miss it? Ruiz has to stand in the middle. On her desk, the case file begins to thicken: scene photos, search maps, statements, financial summaries. She writes status reports that acknowledge every possibility: accident, abduction, voluntary departure. With no body, no signs of violence, and no clear witness placing Ryan in danger, it is hard to justify calling this a crime. But it is equally hard to tell a family that their son may have simply walked away. As summer turns to fall, the search grid shrinks. Volunteers return to their own routines. The reservoir goes back to being a weekend spot for fishing and late-night parties. On paper, Ryan's case remains open. In practice, active leads are gone. In Silver Canyon's records, the story of this chapter ends with a blunt fact: a teenage runner drove to Raven Rock Reservoir one night in 1995, left his car by the water, and vanished. No body. No confirmed sighting. No clean explanation. Years will pass before the next real movement on the file, and when it finally comes, it won't arrive from a desert trail or a roadside tip. It will show up on a computer screen, in a place no one in that first search could have imagined. For most people in Silver Canyon, Ryan Blake's disappearance slowly turned into something you only talked about when you drove past Raven Rock. A story from back then. But inside the Blake house, the clock never really moved on. Every year, the family marked Ryan's birthday. Every year, Laura set out a place at the table. And almost every morning, before work, she did the same small ritual: coffee in one hand, phone in the other, opening her son's Facebook page. The account had been set up years after he vanished, with help from Ryan's classmates. They had scanned old desert photos and cross-country snapshots, trying to keep his name alive. For a long time, nothing changed. The same grid of images. The same last sunset shot over the reservoir. The same series of comments, slowly thinning out as friends graduated, moved away, and built new lives. Then, in 2009, Laura tapped the app and froze. On Ryan's final photo, a desert horizon washed in orange and purple, something new sat just below the caption. A location tag. A city name, several hours from Silver Canyon. She stared at it, convinced her eyes were playing tricks on her. She knew that picture by heart. She'd checked it hundreds of times over the years. There had never been a location attached to it. Her hands shook as she scrolled back through older screenshots she'd saved. No tag. Back to the current page. Tag. New. Recent. Someone had logged into Ryan's account and changed it. Within an hour, Detective Sergeant Jenna Ruiz was standing in the Blake's kitchen again, case file reopened on the table. Laura showed her the screen, the old screenshot, then the new one. Ruiz didn't argue. She could see it too. Whatever had happened at Raven Rock in 1995, this was fresh. And it was traceable. The work that followed was less dramatic than a search party, but just as important. Ruiz contacted the platform, filing an urgent request for access logs tied to Ryan's account. There were forms, signatures, waiting. When the response finally came back, it confirmed what Laura already felt in her gut. The location tag had been added just days earlier, from a public access IP address in a larger Arizona city. The log showed a mobile browser and a short series of logins clustered over a week. Before that, the account had been dormant for years. Someone, using Ryan's credentials, had come back. They had opened his page, looked at his photos, and then, on that last sunset image, told the system where they were. Ruiz coordinated with detectives in the city tied to the IP. They pulled security footage from around the library and community center that shared the Wi-Fi connection. The cameras weren't designed for investigations, they were meant to deter petty theft and vandalism. Angles were bad, lenses blurry. Still, frame by frame, they watched. They saw students with backpacks, parents with kids, people without housing using the benches for a place to rest. One grainy clip showed a thin man in his early 30s, hair pulled back, carrying a worn backpack and wearing running shoes. He sat on a low wall within range of the library's signal, head bent over a phone. From a distance, he could have been anyone. For Ruiz, the timing and the silhouette were enough to circle it in red, but not enough to call it confirmation. Flyers went up in that part of the city, coffee shops, cheap diners, shelter bulletin boards. They showed Ryan as he looked in 1995 and as he might appear now, age progressed by a forensic artist. The caption was careful, missing person. Possible sightings only. No warrant. Contact police with information. A barista at a corner coffee shop called in first. She recognized the age-progressed image. A quiet customer, she said, who came in alone, ordered black coffee, and always paid in cash. He wore the same brand of running shoes every time. She remembered the Arizona plates on his old hatchback parked along the curb, sun-faded and dusty. He never offered a last name. A few days later, a caseworker from a nearby shelter called the same number. She described a man in his 30s, soft-spoken, who stopped in for food and a clean shirt every couple of months. He talked vaguely about growing up in the desert and said he didn't stay in one place long. He never stayed the night, never filled out more than the minimum paperwork. None of that was enough to prove identity in court. There were no fingerprints, no DNA, no clear shot of his face. But layered on top of the IP logs and the sudden profile activity, the pattern was hard to ignore. A male about the right age, the right build, with an Arizona background, appearing regularly in the same tight radius where someone logged into Ryan's account. For Laura and Michael, traveling to that city was like stepping into an alternate version of their son's life. They walked past the library, in and out of the coffee shop, down sidewalks where a man who might be Ryan had stood only days earlier. Every face in a baseball cap looked like him from a distance. Every glimpse of worn running shoes made Laura's heart jump. And every time she got close enough to see clearly, it wasn't him, or it was someone she couldn't bring herself to approach. The evidence didn't answer the questions that had haunted them since 1995. It raised new ones. If Ryan was alive, why choose a location tag instead of a phone call? Was this a slip, a moment of homesickness, or a quiet way of saying I'm still here without inviting anyone closer? Back in Silver Canyon, Ruiz updated the file. The case was no longer just about a teenager who vanished at a reservoir. The paper trail and the digital trail now pointed in a different direction. A young man who may have walked away from his life and, years later, was still choosing distance. No body. No crime scene. Just a series of indirect signs that suggested survival and separation. By the time Chapter 3 closes, the shape of the case has changed. Ryan Blake is no longer only the runner who disappeared at Raven Rock. He has become something more complicated, a missing person who might be alive and unready, or unwilling, to come home. The next step will not be about search parties or evidence bags, but about what it means to officially call this what it appears to be, a voluntary disappearance. By the time the new logs from Ryan Blake's Facebook account are fully analyzed and written into the file, the calendar has already moved on. It's been months since Laura first spotted the location tag on that sunset photo, and almost a decade and a half since Ryan drove out to Raven Rock Reservoir and never came home. In a small office at Silver Canyon PD, Detective Sergeant Jenna Ruiz spreads the entire case across her desk one more time. Scene photos from 1995. Search maps around the reservoir. Interview notes with classmates and coaches. Bank statements showing modest withdrawals. Printouts of early web pages about temp jobs and new IDs. Then, on top of that stack, the 2009 access logs, a public IP address in a larger Arizona city, a handful of recent logins, and a new tag that pinned Ryan's last image to a place hours away. Ruiz is not looking for a new theory. She's looking for a conclusion the department can stand behind. On her legal pad, she lists the options: accident, criminal act, voluntary disappearance. One by one, she crosses off what the evidence won't support. There is no body, no trace of violence at the reservoir, no sign of a struggle in the car or in the Blake home. No ransom demands. No credible witness placing Ryan in obvious danger. What remains are the things that do have weight: online searches about leaving small towns, cash pulled slowly but deliberately, bus routes marked to bigger cities, forum posts about starting over, and now, years later, a single social media account stirred back to life from a public computer far from Silver Canyon. Taken together, they don't read like an abduction. They look like a young man who stepped off the map and, for reasons only he knows, stayed there. In a meeting with the county attorney and department leadership, Ruiz walks through the file like a timeline. Raven Rock. The empty car. The early searches. The dead ends. Then the digital resurgence. The attorney asks what everyone is thinking: if he's alive and not under duress, is there even a crime to solve? The answer is complicated, but the paperwork is not. The case is reclassified as a likely voluntary disappearance. It does not close, it shifts category. In the system, a note is added: further activity will be limited to new, substantial leads. No warrants. No manhunt. If Ryan wants to walk into a police station and give his real name, he can. If not, the law will not go looking for him any harder than it already has. For Michael and Laura, that decision isn't just another line in a report. It's a new kind of grief. In their living room, Ruiz sits across from them with the updated paperwork in her hands. She explains what the reclassification means and what it doesn't. It doesn't mean the department stopped caring. It doesn't mean Ryan is declared dead. It means the balance of evidence leans toward one conclusion: he left on his own and, at least as of that location tag, was living somewhere else by choice. Laura listens, eyes on the folder with her son's name. The idea that he survived brings a flicker of relief she never got from the shoreline at Raven Rock. But it rides alongside something sharp: the realization that if he is alive, he has also chosen not to call. For years, she told herself there was a wall between them built by fate, an accident, a crime, something out of everyone's control. Now she has to live with a different wall, one that might have been built by Ryan himself. Michael reacts differently. He has spent almost 15 years insisting someone out there did this to his son. The thought that Ryan simply walked away feels like an indictment of the town, of their home, of him. In short interview bites, he keeps returning to the same sentence: we would have helped him. If he'd told us he was drowning, we would have thrown him a rope. Ruiz doesn't argue with either of them. As an investigator, she has learned that some files end not with a suspect in cuffs, but with a line that reads, "Subject may be alive and living under own volition." For her, the case becomes part of a larger pattern, people who slip away through cracks in family, community, and expectation, leaving nothing behind but questions and, sometimes, a digital trace. In Silver Canyon, the story settles into local folklore. People mention it when they drive past Raven Rock at night, or when another kid talks about leaving town. It becomes a cautionary tale, depending on who tells it, about pressure, about secrets, about how easy it is to assume a teenager's quiet is harmless. The file itself ends up in a cabinet labeled with years and case numbers. On the tab, in black marker, is Ryan's name and the same case ID that's followed him since 1995. Inside are the documents Ruiz has spent so long assembling, including the final classification form that acknowledges what everyone is circling: no body, no confirmed crime, a strong possibility of a life lived somewhere beyond Silver Canyon's reach. The last image we leave with is simple: Laura on the front porch at dusk, the desert sky fading the way it did in that photo Ryan once posted. The porch light is on, the way she used to leave it when he was late coming home from practice. Whether he ever sees it again is a question only he can answer. What do you think happened after that new location tag appeared? Did Ryan leave a breadcrumb on purpose, or was it just one accidental glimpse into a life he meant to keep hidden? Tell us your thoughts and theories in the comments below, and if you want more cases like this, where the answers live in the gray areas, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what comes next on C Crime Stories.